Down there, life continues. The traffic is awful, stocks go on trading, and Star Trek is still showing.
day, grade 8 learners. Welcome to today's natural sciences lesson. My name is Papichezo Singo, and this lesson is proudly brought to you by the Harding Department of Education. In today's lesson, we're going to be learning under the topic interactions and interdependence within the environment, and the subtopic is conservations of ecosystems. The subtopic is conservations of ecosystems. Now, let's move on to lesson objectives. So these are the goals that you want to achieve by the end of today's lesson. So at the end of the lesson, you should be able to explain the importance of maintaining biodiversity and describe the sustainable use of natural resources. All this is sourced from your KEPS document on page 38. Now let's go through pre-knowledge together. In grade 5 and 6, we were introduced to the concept of an ecosystem and feeding relationships. And so far in grade 8, we have learned about ecosystems and the different parts that make up ecosystems. We have learned about the feeding relationships that exist within ecosystems, and we have learned about the adaptations that animals have to go through in order to survive in an ever-changing environment. And we also learned about how to keep balance in ecosystems. All right, now let's move on to the baseline activity. I'm going to read out the question and then give you time to answer the questions. Now, the question reads, describe how the different organisms are adapted to live in their specific environment. The first organism is a whale. So you describe how the whale is adapted to live in its environment for 3 marks. The second question is a Venus flytrap. So you describe how the Venus flytrap is adapted to live in its environment. And then the third one, C, is a dung beetle. So you will describe how the dung beetle is adapted to live in its environment for 3 marks. All right, so I'm going to give you 5 minutes to answer these questions. Then after 5 minutes, we will go through the questions together. Don't forget to send in your answers and any questions that you may have to the WhatsApp line that is at the bottom of the screen. I'll just read it for you, 079 578 2908. See you after 5 minutes. Welcome back, grade 8 learners. I hope you're sending in your solutions. Now let's answer the questions together. So we start off with the adaptations for the whale for 3 marks, which is 3 points. Okay, so the first point is the whale is a mammal, so it does not have gills. So mammals don't have gills. You and I, we are mammals and we do not have any gills. But it is adapted to live in the ocean because it can hold its breath for a long time under the water so that it can dive down and also catch some prey, filter, or feed. Number 2, it has a blowhole on top of its head for breathing. So it uses that blowhole on top of its head for breathing. And sometimes I'm sure on some TV shows you've seen water coming out of that blowhole as well. And then the blubber keeps it warm as it insulates it and also provides energy when diving and swimming in very cold seas. And it also has a strong tail, streamlined body, and its 4 limbs and flippers are for swimming. All right, okay, now let's quickly go back. Now, a Venus flytrap for 3 marks. Now, this plant is adapted as it is carnivorous, so it eats animals, it eats flies. Now, it catches flies and it has adapted to digest them. And then the red coloring on the catchers, if you saw the picture, it has that nice red coloring on the catchers, attracts the flies because it looks like meat. So when the fly looks at the Venus plant, it's going to think that it is meat. And then as soon as the flies land on the surface of the plant is then triggered and then clamps shut, catching the fly. So the fly will come and sit on the open part on the open flower, and then the flower clamps shut or closes and then catches the fly. Okay, and then the catchers are adapted with spikes on the end to form a cage around the fly and keep it there while it is digested. And keep it there while it is digested. All right, and 5, the plant can also photosynthesize as it is green and contains chlorophyll. So it is carnivorous, it eats flies, and 2, it is green, so it can photosynthesize. So it is adapted to 2 ways of gaining nutrition. So here's 1 minute to copy down how the Venus flytrap is adapted to its environment. 1 minute. Now let's talk about a dung beetle, how it is adapted to live in its environment. A dung beetle has adapted to its environment by using the dung from other big herbivores as a food source and to lay their eggs. 2, they've adapted by being able to collect the dung and roll it into rolls so they can transport it to where it is needed. This also creates a warm, safe chamber in which they lay their eggs and feed their young, and protect them. The dung beetles have strong front legs so they can do the rolling all that dung. And then their back legs have fine control of the ball so the ball is not going to roll away. Okay, take 1 minute to quickly copy down these adaptations. Welcome back, grade 8. Now let's move on to terminology. These are the important terms that we need to learn in order to understand the concepts we're learning today. So the first term is conservation. Conservation, this is the sustainable use of an ecosystem's resources or natural resources. The second term, alien species. Alien species, this is species that are not indigenous to a specific area. Species that are not indigenous to a specific area. And then monoculture. Monoculture, this is single crop species planted over large areas. Single crop species planted over large areas. And then sustainable. Sustainable means keeping an ecological balance by not using up resources. And biodiversity. Biodiversity, this is the total variety of species in an area. The total variety of species in an area. Now let's learn about the principles of conservation. The principles of conservation. Ecosystems, these are homes to biodiversity and provide natural resources such as water, minerals, food, and recreation. So an ecosystems provide all of these resources. And often when you look at an ecosystem, it looks this beautiful. You have this view. So an ecosystem, they are homes to biodiversity and provide resources such as water, minerals, food, and recreation. And this is what it usually looks like when you look at it. Now, more on the principles of conservation. So what is conservation about? It is about sharing the ecosystem's resources, but not just sharing them fairly and using them in a sustainable way so that they are available to future generations and they don't finish. Now, conservation also means, so it means sharing resources fairly and using them in a sustainable way so that they are available for future generations. It also means not harming the ecosystem and not damaging the habitat, therefore protecting and managing our biodiversity. So remember, biodiversity is the variety of species that are found in an area. So that is what conservation means. Sharing resources, using them fairly, using them in a sustainable way, not harming the ecosystem and not damaging the habitat, and protecting and managing our biodiversity. That is what conservation means. Now, natural ecosystems, they carry out important processes that we may not know of. Let's find out the processes that they carry out. What do? They regulate the atmosphere and the climate. In terms of temperature and rainfall, they regulate the atmosphere and the climate. If we talk about some members of the ecosystem, such as the green plants, they manage the levels of atmospheric carbon dioxide by using that carbon dioxide in the process of photosynthesis, then producing oxygen, which is needed by all the other animals for respiration. What else do ecosystems do? What else do these natural ecosystems do? They filter and they clean and they retain water. So they play this very important role of filtering, cleaning, and retaining water. What else do? They form soil. So when rocks erode and they form soil, and they also improve the quality of the soil. Remember, the plants, which are the producers, grow from the soil. They grow from the soil. So the ecosystem, a natural ecosystem, process by forming the soil and improving its quality. Now, natural ecosystems also do more. They provide home to the pollinators of plants, such as your bees that help in the pollination of plants, and including those that provide us with food. Bees are pollinators of plants and they provide us with honey. They also provide us with honey. They also recycle waste, and this is done by decomposers. Remember when we're learning about feeding relationships and the important roles that decomposers play, the important roles that decomposers play in recycling nutrients and returning them back into the ecosystem. So natural ecosystems do those processes as well. What else? They produce wood, food, and fuel. So they do a lot of important processes that help us in our day-to-day living. So it is very important to conserve these natural ecosystems, as they help us so much with these important processes that they carry out. Now let's talk about human activities that result in the destruction of natural ecosystems. So many ecosystems are destroyed as a result of human activities, and human populations, they continue to increase, and the earth's resources are being used. So every day a new child is born and the human population increases. So every day there is an increase in the earth's population. What does it mean? An increase in the earth's population means the earth's resources are being used. Now there's an extra member, and the earth's resources will continue to be used more and more. So as ecosystems are lost, species become extinct, biodiversity decreases, upsetting the balance in an ecosystem. Remember, when we're learning about the balance in ecosystems, we did learn that biodiversity is very important for an ecosystem. It is very important because within an ecosystem there's interaction between the living organisms, and there's interaction between living organisms and the non-living things that you find in the ecosystem. Therefore, all these living things and non-living things, they depend on each other. So there's an interdependence that exists within an ecosystem, and they also interact with each other, and that interaction is very important. So if there's a loss of biodiversity, which means all of the organisms are going to be affected. All of the organisms in that particular ecosystem are going to be affected. For example, if there is deforestation, all the organisms that rely on trees for food, trees for a habitat, or trees for protection are going to be affected, which means the entire ecosystem is going to be affected, and there's going to be a reduction in the variety of species that you find in that one particular area. Let's look at more human activities that disrupt the ecosystem. Now, the activities that cause extinction and reduce biodiversity include replacing natural habitats that are usually diverse, that usually have a large variety of living organisms with monocultures, and single crop species. If we look at these two pictures that I've just put up, here on this side, you can see there is biodiversity. There's this yellow flowering plant, and then there's this pink flowering plant, and there are also other plants in that particular ecosystem. When humans clear out this type of land and then introduce a single crop species. Now, what has been lost? We have lost the pink flowers, we've lost the yellow flowers, and we've lost all the other flowers as well, which means now we have lost biodiversity and the ecosystem has been disrupted. All the feeding relationships that were existing here have been disrupted. All the interactions and the interdependence that existed in this ecosystem has been disrupted by having monocultures where there's only one crop. That one crop can only service maybe one food chain, but not an entire food web. Here's another activity that disrupts an ecosystem or can cause extinction. This is too much harvesting of plants and animals, too much fishing in a particular lake or too much fishing in a particular river will cause extinction if you don't allow the organism to reproduce and to replenish, if you don't allow the trees to regrow. So if you cut down one tree, you need to replace that tree by planting another. So if there is no replacing, or if there's no time given or an allowance given for those organisms to breed and reproduce and for their offspring to also grow and breed and reproduce, there will be extinction of those particular organisms. There will be extinction of those particular organisms. Another human activity that is done that may cause extinction or reduction in biodiversity is using pesticides to kill animals that cause diseases such as mosquitoes and rats that eat stored gains. So this can cause a loss in variety. If all the rats are killed in an ecosystem, it means that the snakes and the owls and all the other animals that depend on the rats for food or that hunt the rats for food are going to need another alternative as a food source, or they're also going to die out and die of hunger because their food source would have been destroyed. So using pesticides to kill animals is not such a good idea. And then activity 4. Activity 4 is polluting the environment with gas emissions from cars and from factories. So from our lesson, from our balancing ecosystem lesson, we did learn about the gas emissions, how they cause climate change, how they go on to cause global warming. These gas emissions pollute the air, and different animals rely on clean air in order for them to carry out their life processes such as respiration so that they can have energy to work or to do work. Plants are too few now to manage to reduce all of the increased carbon dioxide levels that are there in the atmosphere. Next, introducing exotic alien species to compete for resources with the indigenous plants and animals. Right? Not all plants that we find today in our ecosystems are indigenous to the area. Well, there are some areas that are being conserved and the people there, they make sure that no alien plants are introduced. But humans have over time have introduced exotic alien species. For example, the prickly pear is not indigenous in South Africa. So it was introduced by people that came to the country and then started planting us. Now the problem with having these alien species is that plants from places such as Australia and South America were introduced to South Africa for different uses. One of them was windbreaks, fuel, and for decorative purposes, maybe to decorate a garden. So these are the plants that were introduced. So now these plants can thrive because they came from areas that have a similar climate to South Africa, and they are already adapted to the conditions here. So they will thrive, they'll grow, and they'll populate an area, they'll reproduce and populate an area. However, These plants, because now they are spreading successfully in South Africa, they don't have any natural enemies to keep them in check. And as a result, their populations increase rapidly, they overpopulate an area and end up out competing the indigenous vegetation and taking over the entire area. If you remember from feeding relationships, if there is a resource that is scarce, different populations are going to compete for it. Now, because there are no animals to eat the alien plant, there are no animals to eat the alien plant, or there are no other animals to eat the alien organism, it is going to overgrow, it is going to overpopulate an area. And if there's a resource that is being shared by the indigenous plants and the exotic plants are going to get more of that resource. And then we might have the indigenous vegetation becoming extinct or reducing in its biodiversity. For example, the prickly pear's natural enemy is the camel. Our country doesn't have much camels, so the prickly pear will grow and thrive and outcompete the indigenous plants that are found in the area. And it is not easy to get rid of or to eradicate alien vegetation, but all hope is not lost. There have been methods that have been introduced to control alien vegetation. The first one is called biological control. Biological control. This is when living things are used to control the population of the pest. So what farmers do, or what scientists do, is they look for the natural enemy of that alien plant, introduce it to the same area, and use it to control the population of the alien plant. So a natural enemy of the plant pest, such as insects, fungi, is introduced from its native country and used to control the alien plant. So they'll go to the native country of the alien plant, get a pest that is the natural enemy or the pest that feeds on that particular plant, and bring it over so that it can control the population of the alien plant. A second way of controlling alien plants is chemical control. This one is a bit expensive. So what do they do during chemical control? Chemical poisons are sprayed on the alien plants to kill them. So, however, this method is expensive and has to be repeated every year. And another downside or another disadvantage is that it can also harm the environment, because introducing chemical poisons in the environment not only is going to harm the alien plant, but it will harm all the other plants that are in the area as well as poison the water as the chemicals get into the water. And then the third way of controlling alien plants is called mechanical control. Mechanical control. This is also expensive. Why? Because it involves physical activity. You physically have to remove the alien plant from the environment. How? This involves burning the alien plant, or cutting down the alien plant, or uprooting the alien plant. So it's physically intensive. It is physically intensive. And another disadvantage is that it also needs to be repeated every year, because the young seedlings that maybe would have been missed are going to germinate, and some seeds are capable of staying dormant through winter months and then germinate in the summer months. So it needs to be repeated on an annual basis. It needs to be repeated on an annual basis. Now, invasive alien plants are controlled successfully when a combination of the three methods are used: biological control, chemical control, and mechanical control. However, you can also use them this one is more of a chemical control. You can use them for firewood and to make furniture. This is more of a mechanical control. And making of household objects is another way of controlling the alien vegetation. and people can earn a living from it. So you can use the alien plant. If it's a tree, you can use those alien trees to make furniture. You can use those alien trees to make furniture. Now, how do we protect and manage our ecosystem? How do we protect and manage our ecosystem? So protecting and managing an ecosystem begins with protecting each and every habitat. So this is the purpose of why in this country there are so many national parks. For example, there's the Kruger National Park, and we also have nature reserves such as the Zoo Lake. So once a habitat is protected, the conservationists make sure that it stays healthy. For example, they're working very, very hard to protect the rhino. They're working very hard to protect the rhino from poachers. They're working day and night. Now, another way is setting aside large areas of land that are rich in biodiversity so that the ecosystems are conserved. And such examples are the creation of parks such as the Kalahari Transfrontier Park, which is 3.6 million hectares, which means it is a very, very large area, and it can be managed in an ecological sound way, which means there's no intrusion from humans, there's no one who's poaching animals and reducing their biodiversity. Now, another way of protecting and managing ecosystems is introducing what are called legislations to stop activities such as poaching, collecting wild plants, and clearing of land. These legislations are very important, but however, some from time to time they can prove a bit difficult to enforce. They can prove a bit difficult to enforce. Now we've arrived at activity 1. The first question is define biodiversity and explain why it is important to maintain biodiversity. Number 2, name 3 ways of controlling alien plant invasion. Alien plant invasion, I'm going to give you 4 minutes to answer these questions. Then after 4 minutes, we will do the corrections together. Send in your questions and answers to 079 578 2908. See you after 4 minutes. Welcome back, grade 8. Now let's answer the questions together. Define biodiversity. 1. So biodiversity is the total variety of species in an area. Now the question has a second part. The second part is explain why is it important to maintain biodiversity. It is important to maintain biodiversity because the ecosystem will become unbalanced. We need that balance in an ecosystem. So we need to maintain biodiversity. Number 2, name 3 ways of controlling alien plant invasion. What are they? They are biological, chemical, and mechanical control methods. These 3 can work to control alien plants. Okay, I'm going to give you 1 minute to quickly copy down the corrections. Then after 1 minute, we'll continue with our lesson. Welcome back, grade 8. Let's continue with our lesson. Now we're going to learn about the preservation of wetlands. What are wetlands? Wetlands are waterlogged areas which are important habitats for water-loving plants and many animals, especially water birds. They are like sponges, so they hold water, and this means that they are natural stores for water and they are good for flood control. So wetlands are very important because they do so much good to the environment. Now, Working for Wetlands is a project in South Africa that aims to look at damaged wetlands and to look after those ones that are also in good conditions, because our wetlands are very important to us. For example, one important wetland is Isimangaliso Wetland Park. Okay, now what do wetlands include? There are different types of wetlands that are there. We've got marshes. There's a picture to show you what marshes look like. We also have what are called floodplains, and we have what are called estuarine systems. So these are different types of wetlands that exist. Okay, now in South Africa, more than 50% of our wetlands have already been lost. That is devastating news, isn't it? So this is why it is very important to protect the ones that we have left, as they play an important role in our ecosystem. Remember, they are good for flood control. They are also habitats for different living organisms, and they are like sponges and they hold water. And they also serve as breeding grounds for animals. Remember, animals need to reproduce so that their species don't die out and become extinct. And they are also used for grazing by farmers, and they are also used for recreational purposes such as fishing and boating. And because they are sponges, they are able to retain water. Plants such as reeds grow in wetlands, and people use them for thatching and making baskets. I'm sure your grandmother has a very beautiful basket made from a reed. Now, how can we contribute to the conservation of wetlands? Now, or to conservation in general, how can me and you contribute? What role can we play? So every person can be involved in conservation. So materials such as plastic, paper, glass and metal can be recycled. So these are materials that can be recycled. So our municipalities can set up collection of these different materials, collection for plastic, collection for paper, glass and metal, and they can be taken to different depots for recycling. And organic waste, remember, paper, plastic, metal are not the only waste that humans produce. Organic waste can be collected in gardens and used to make compost. Composts are very good for the environment because they introduce nutrients back into the soil. They are very, very rich in nutrients, and decomposers can break down the organic materials that are found in compost and recycle nutrients back into the ecosystem. So me and you can do so much to conserve our ecosystem. Now, what else can we do? So everyone should contribute to conservation. We are all responsible for ensuring sustainable use of natural resources. All of us need to play a part. All of us. Now, what can we do? What can we do? Number one, reduce energy consumption. Like now, you can turn off light switches if it's during the day. If it's at night, you can make sure that you switch on the light if you are in the room. If it's time for bed and you're going to sleep, you might as well switch off the lights. Now, use energy efficient bulbs. Don't use bulbs that use a lot of watts. Rather, swap them out for energy efficient LED bulbs. And instead of switching on five lamps, just use a lamp desk for you when you are writing your homework in the evening. And what else can we do? We can practice reducing consumption, reusing things that we have bought, and to recycle. And what does this do for us? If you reduce, if you reuse, and if you recycle, this will result in a happier earth, which means the generations to come will get to enjoy this beautiful, majestic planet that we live in, just as we are enjoying it now. If we practice reducing, so you reduce your consumption. If you're reusing, if you can reuse by making sure you buy quality materials so that you can be able to reuse them. And also practice recycling your paper, your plastic, your glass, and your metal. Then we will have a happier earth for all of us to enjoy. What else can we do? We can become responsible consumers. What does it mean to be a responsible consumer? Think about the cost to the environment of the things we buy and the food we eat. So every time you're buying something, you think about the environment, how it may be good for the environment or how it may be bad for the environment. So become a responsible consumer. Some of these products that we purchase, the way they are produced is not friendly to the environment or to the living organisms that live in different ecosystems. Like some companies, they perform animal testing, they test these products on animals, harming the animals, reducing the biodiversity in our ecosystem. Some of the production involves pollution of the air, the water, and the soil, and the use of pesticides. The next time you want to buy pesticide, think twice, because it is damaging the environment as well as deforestation. Go paperless so that the number of trees that are cut down each and every year is reduced. So make better choices when you are shopping. Make sustainable choices. Do fair trade. Shop local. And make sure you shop organic. You can plant a small garden at the backyard at home there to make sure that you have a good supply of organic vegetables. And do free range. Instead of that other chicken, why not try the hard-body chicken? It's more nutritious and it's nicer, and you can breed it at home. Now, how can we practice the sustainable use of resources? So you need to make sure that you use resources so that they are not depleted. If there is a power outage, don't chop down all the trees in the area to make fire and to cook. Use your resources in a way to make sure that they're not depleted. If you're going to cut down a tree to use for fuel, make sure you plant another one. In fact, if you cut down one tree, plant 3 more trees to replace that one tree that you've cut down. Instead of cutting down the entire tree, why not just cut the branches instead of cutting down the entire tree? Right, when collecting bark from trees or fishing in wetlands, only take a certain quantity. Don't take the whole resource. Don't take everything. Leave the rest for regeneration or for other living organisms to use and to enjoy when you're cutting down bark. And enough resources have to remain so that the population can regrow and provide resources the following year. Like, for example, if you enjoy fishing, you can practice what is called catch and release, where you catch the fish and then return it back into the water. You would have enjoyed your fishing trip, and the fish will still be alive so that it can go back to its family. Remember, all these organisms that we kill belong to populations. They belong to populations, and they are responsible for regrowing their populations. They are responsible for regrowing their populations. Now we've arrived at activity number 2. Question 1. What do you think will happen if the natural resource is not used in a sustainable way? Number 2. In which way can individuals contribute to conservation? Number 3. Annually, we celebrate World Wetlands Day on 2 February, which was actually this month. This means that wetlands are very important ecosystems. Write down 5 reasons why wetlands should be preserved. I'm giving you 5 minutes to complete this activity, and then after 5 minutes, we'll go through the solutions together. See you after 5 minutes. Welcome back. Now let's answer the questions together. What do you think would happen, or what do you think will happen, if the natural resources are not used in a sustainable way? Why? The ecosystem will become unbalanced because different living organisms depends on each other, and things will run out, and some living organisms will become extinct. 2. In which way can individuals contribute to conservation? There's so much we can do. Save water, reduce energy consumption, become a responsible consumer, and practice the 3 R's. What are the 3 R's? Reduce, reuse, and recycle. Reduce, reuse, and recycle. These are the ways in which we can contribute to conservation. All right. And annually we celebrate the World Wetlands Day on 2 February. This means wetlands are very important ecosystems. Now, we needed to write 5 reasons why wetlands should be preserved. Reason 1, wetlands provides a habitat for many organisms. This includes plants and habitats. They act as a sponge or filter, taking in water and providing protection against floods, especially in the summer months where the rains are very heavy and frequent. 2, it is a sanctuary for wildlife when there is a drought. So if there's a drought, wildlife will migrate to wetlands in order for them to survive. And 4, they are breeding areas for fish and water birds. So water birds and fish, they breed, they reproduce in wetlands. And they are just beautiful. They are beautiful places and leisure activities. We can go there to swim, to boat, and bird watching. All these can be enjoyed by people. So not only are they important to the different wildlife, they are also important to us for fun activities as well. So you see, we have the best of both worlds when it comes to wetlands. Now, what did we learn today? Let's wrap up our lesson. So we learned about conservation. What did we learn? We learned that ecosystems are homes to biodiversity, and they provide us with natural resources such as water, minerals, food, and recreation. So they provide us with all these things. So we need to conserve them. A natural ecosystem will carry out important processes. What are these processes? They recycle the nutrients back into the soil. They give us new soil and they form soil. They are very, very important to us. And we also learned how different human activities destroy natural ecosystems, resulting in a reduction in biodiversity and extinction of some living organisms. And we learned about how alien plants can be controlled through mechanical, biological, and chemical control methods. We can control alien plants. And we also learned about legislation, how legislation can be created in order to control the use and sustainability and conservation of natural ecosystems. However, they may be difficult to enforce, but with time, legislations have been working very, very hard. Very, very hard. Legislators have been working very, very hard to protect our natural ecosystems so that we can enjoy them and future generations can also enjoy them. Okay, grade 8, thank you so much for joining me in today's lesson. I hope to see you in the next one. Until next time, goodbye.